for coming. Tonight, we're going to be entertained by Lori Blauner, Leanne Dunick, Michael McGee, Shinyi Pai, Sylvia Byrne-Pollock, and Molly Tenenbaum. I'm so happy you're here at Jack Straw. This is a wonderful organization that is taking care of all of us that are reading tonight. These are all alumni of the Jack Straw Writing Program. And when I introduce you to our readers, I will also introduce you to the year that they were part of the program. I want to say thank you to Jack Straw, especially Joan Rabinowitz and the mighty Levi Fuller, and our engineers tonight, Zeos Green and Aaron Shellman. Our event is being simulcast on Facebook and YouTube and recorded for later. Our funders tonight are the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, For Culture, Washington State Arts Commission, National Endowment for the Arts, Arts Fund, Lester and Phyllis Epstein Foundation, the Rainier Institute and Foundation, and individual contributors. And I want to begin with our land acknowledgement. Today we meet on the land of the Duwamish, Suquamish, and Muckleshoot nations and other Coast Salish peoples, past and present. The staff, board, and artists of Jack Straw Cultural Center acknowledge that we are living, creating, working, and playing on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle and the Salish Sea, and we honor them and the land itself with deep gratitude. I think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Kathleen Flenniken, and I had this idea to do a reading that honored many of those books that came out during the pandemic and which kind of got lost in the shuffle. And I was overwhelmed by the response when I sent out a call to the Jack Straw alumni who are spread far and near. And as a result of that wonderful response, we're having 6 readings. This is the third of 6. And the last one will be a Zoom reading for some of our poets that are spread across the country. Who knows, if we do a fiction one, we'll have the same sort of response. But these are all poets tonight. Okay, so we're going to begin tonight with Lori Blauner, who was a Jack Straw writer in 2007. Lori Blauner is the author of 9 books of poetry, 5 novels, and a book of hybrid nonfiction called I Was One of My Memories. A new novel is available from Spootin' Devil Press. Her latest poetry book, Come Closer, won the 2022 Library of Poetry Award from Bitter Oleander Press. Please welcome Lori Blauner.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you to Matt Briggs, who was our curator in 2007. I'm going to read from Come Closer. And thank you to my husband for being here, too. How to build something of use. Use a hammer, nails, glue, and any other available tools. Get naked and let the dog watch, tilting its head in wonderment. The anticipation of pain creates pain. An unassembled chair might prefer to become a table. Twist the knobs until they can't go any further. Measure everything with humor, since nothing is forever. The diagrams must overrun the inside of your head. Don't listen to friends, neighbors, or family. Explain the long history of scrap metal and hide a small piece of yourself deeply inside. The next poem's about aging, and it's called Aging in the Little Place. Alive, he took me out to dinner with my tiny head. I whispered into his enormous ear that something was hurting me. Something was always hurting me for a while. The body gets over itself, he replied. But I couldn't understand the stitches of wrinkles, flesh with seams, dark, snarling animal hair appearing all over my body. There was no English equivalent for it. I was afraid of breaking into little soft pieces that could fit into his mouth. I wasn't attached to anything. I couldn't hold on to his large, important arms much longer. I would be forgotten. Would I roam around his teeth, searching for the spot where his words were caught? It was a little place, abandoned and old inside my head, without room to turn around. Everything eventually fell, I told myself as my mind emptied. He didn't have any more food to offer to my small, strange body that would soon be gone. The next poem is called The Bomb, which is relevant, and I wrote it before any of the current wars. The bomb was supposed to make things better. Instead, my bedroom is riddled with holes, my furniture juggled and jumbled. The bomb couldn't decide what to do with my pillow, which was left intact. The pillow was filled with my imaginary place, a desert devoid of people, but with pink blooms on spiky green stalks that appear after a rain. The bomb found something in the distance and noisily moved on. When it happened, I said, "Wait, I'm not ready." I had a body that served me well once I understood its particular needs: eating, sleeping, running. I used to grow hard and ready to burst. The bomb snarled, "Now you see my terrifying magic act. Here, then gone." I answered, "I was hoping something different would happen." My absurdity surfaced and departed like smoke. Bits of the world remain now. I consist of edges and corners. I watch the bomb again and again in my memory at different angles, discovering scientific tidbits, a last cloud in the shape of my pillow, or how the horizon grew softer, or how all the objects eventually learned how to stop dancing. Soon the bomb tells me I can start all over again. And this next poem is called The Taxidermist. I was the most flawed person I ever had to live with. My wife said that something had lately come between us, like a child's overflowing water glass. At night, I ached and screamed, flailing phantom limbs. I called across rooftops, and the animals came, bristling their black, white, and brown fur, wind stitching their innocent eyes. I measured paws and wings and claws. I stayed inside. I recorded the essentials, like my sister's baby growing incrementally. Muscles were migrating clouds, the small necks marvelous at swiveling, skin carefully adjusted. Everything worked. Orange pads pushed me sideways. Useless, sharp yellow teeth still frightened me into a corner. I sleepwalked during the day. Human voices whimpered. We couldn't have children. They would eat us alive anyway, my wife said. Our bodies grew accustomed to emptiness. Breathe deeply, I wanted to tell her. We'll fill up inside. And my last poem is her cookbook. This is about loving something you like, really, that you love to do. The recipes include a music souffle and an anti-gravity salad, which is difficult to grab out of the air, a boar-tooth sandwich, and a shimmering star cake. A glass of rain or evergreen soup go well as sides to accompany a main dish. The cookbook is written by a friend's little girl, an up-and-coming chef. Open your mouth and close your eyes, the small cook declaims gleefully. I am standing in her yellow kitchen. I do as I'm told and taste warmth. The sun, I guess. I open my eyes and smile at a round, glowing orange dessert with porcupine-inspired rays. Where do you find the ingredients for the food you make? From everything. She is a happy girl. Even though we are inside the house, a fog appears over the child's head and vegetables and fruit fall onto the floor around us. She begins gathering all the food, and I wonder what she will create with it. I suddenly understand that once you love doing something, you see it everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. So we're going to have 3 readers and maybe a 5-minute break and then 3 more readers just to give you a sense of the evening. Our next reader is Leanne Dunick, who was a Jack Straw writer in 2019 when I was actually a curator. Leanne Dunick is a multidisciplinary artist. She's the fiction editor at Tahoma Literary Review and the leader of the band The Deep Cove. Her most recent work is a book of lyric prose and photographs entitled Wet from Talon Books 2024. Please welcome Leanne Dunick.
Hello, everyone. Is this microphone actually working? Can you hear me? Okay. It's more for the recording. Got it. I will project as I learned to do in Jack Straw. So I'm going to be reading from my new book, Wet, which was my Jack Straw project in 2019. But part of the reason for doing this series that Kathleen was inspired to host so generously was to showcase books that came out during COVID. And so I have the fortune of having 2 books that came out in the period of COVID. So I'll start with my first one, which is called 1.5 of You. It's a lyric memoir with an instrumental soundtrack. Okay. First, there were them, and them, and them. Then more. Faces mixed. A pocket here, a clan there. Landscapes shifted, people too. Communities disappeared. And now there is me. I will draw you some maps. Birthmarks. Some have vanished, but then again, nostalgia distorts. Sometimes I forget that I'm Chinese, that I'm not. I dwell in the Chinatowns of port cities, Victoria, Vancouver, stints in Singapore, Kobe, Yokohama, San Francisco, and Seattle. No answers, only red and gold plastic decorations, and the question, is your mother Chinese? They never ask if it's my father who's Chinese. Chinatown, 4x10 room, the gap between books, paper and beeswax, scent captive like insects in resin. Selves we shelve for future reference. Discover intimacy of sleep. Difficult to catalog, love is full of defiant compulsions. Inhale, wear it like rubies. Nourish body, nourish spirit, attract a lover, attract divinity. When I was a kid, my relations shopped at the same butcher in Chinatown. Mounds of pig ears chopped red and sticky, brown paper wrapped. Water chestnut, pomegranate, pomelo. Crunch cartilage, stew hard, bone broth. Silt accretes. This is not failing. Anything can be trapped. Sedimentary, layer upon layer. Whole, but not perfect, animals will die. Salt and sentiments collect in cracks. Now we are bays. I dream of finding you, and my mouth opens to pour jagged rocks. This next poem is a found poem that is a result of me typing in Vancouver, Chinatown in the month of May 2020 into the Google search. And so the lines of this poem are the headlines that come up when you do a Google search. Vancouver's Chinatown lions defaced with anti-Asian COVID. New premium casual plant-based restaurant moving into. Another racially charged attack in Vancouver's Chinatown. Racist graffiti scrawled on Chinatown lions in Vancouver. For Chinatown seniors, survival means staying in touch. Chinatown businesses in city-owned mall desperate for rent. Chinatown performance aims to bring healing after racist. COVID-19, series of anti-Asian assaults and vandalism. Vancouver Police Department report a 625% increase in anti-Asian crime investigations. Anti-Asian hate crimes in Vancouver, not what veterans fought. Cat stuck on SkyTrain platform found safe and sound, thanks. Okay, I'll just read one more from this book. Chinatown supermarket on Kiefer is permanently closed. You wouldn't recognize Maine at Georgia, and did you hear about the viaduct? Kam Gok Yuan was taken by fire. The shop on Gore that sold cherimoyas and holy basil disappeared after the rent increased. On Pender, currywurst, coffee, skateboards. An uncertain future. Even Newtown Bakery has had a facelift. Displacement is a pattern, not a single occurrence. Goldstone with its oversized clock is newly gone, but of course Sun Yat-sen Gardens and the tourist it brings are still there. Yes, there will always be tourists. I will write Chinatown a poem, a love letter. Okay, so I'm going to read from Wet, but I haven't been writing very much because I'm doing this PhD thing that's, while it's enhancing my brain, it's also killing it a bit. And so I happened to write a poem in the last few weeks, and I thought, well, why don't I try reading it? So I've called this poem On the Day Steve Albini Died. Steve Albini was a producer. This poem has nothing to do with him. Okay. The excavator's hum is so familiar it calms me. I can already imagine the rubble because I've seen it countless times before. A crush is inevitable. This will happen to you too. By earthquake or so-called progress, it will happen. As I said, inevitable. This particular house I'm talking about, its collapse dragged on over decades. A cumulative hoard and then a fire. A quarter of the roof sunk inward, yet my neighbor stayed. A tarp was placed over the wound. His son removed metal tools, yellowed medical equipment, tubing, stereos, and cabinets, and left them on the lawn. On summer days, the front door stayed open. No threat of anyone wanting to sack the place. I'd see the man in the alley and in his always threadbare clothes. I'd say hello, my eyes imploring, dear neighbor, I know, it's so hard to leave something you love. The breaking, but he was elsewhere. Years have passed since I've seen him. The broken house remained. Grass enveloped the abandoned tools. Eventually, a fence was erected around the perimeter along with a sign, for sale. Now, from a block away, I inhale a life in particulate, rubber, rust. As I approach the address, all is quiet except for the sounds of two men battling the force of an industrial hose. Water pushes debris along the sidewalk in rivulets. In only 20 minutes, a home became a lumber pile. The exhaust from the idling Corolla out front cannot penetrate this immense exhale. Okay, it's time to get wet. So I started this book in 2015. That might be all the context you need. Okay. In this hemisphere, it's the rainy season, but water refuses to fall. Neighboring forest fires in Indonesia taint the sky with stormless clouds. Last summer, the Pacific Northwest's trees crisped like matchsticks. I seem to have brought the weather with me. In case it wasn't clear, this book is taking place in Southeast Asia. I was in a fiery Pacific Northwest before heading to live in Singapore, where they were also having severe forest fires, and so that's what inspired this book. That last line I wrote was actually written by Crowded House, and I actually wrote a poem using only Crowded House lyrics for any Crowded House fans here, but I did not get the permission to print it in this book, so I thought I would share it with you, the special exclusive Crowded House poem. So I've called it Crowded House and I Talk About Past, Present, and Future Summers. Sun shines on the black clouds hanging over the domain. Dust from a distant sun showers over everyone. That kind of view don't need an explanation. Everything is good for you if it doesn't kill you. Been waiting so long for these walls to crack. Every summer is a recurring dream. Ice will melt, water will boil. I beg the endless summers to lift their curse. No way to break this spell. Don't tell. Okay. So this story is told from the perspective of a fashion model, and she is observing the various injustices around her in the metropolitan city of Singapore, on non-human lives, but also migrant refugees. On the way to an audition, a faint voice behind me says, "Miss?" I turn around. A man stands timidly a few feet away from me. He points to himself. Me, Tamil, India person, no work. I know I only have $10 and that I need it for my lunch today. Surely he needs it too. I hand him a $2 bill, hoping I'll get this job and that the next time I can give him more. Women pull at my inner thighs to fit me into their shapewear. They talk around me. Do they think I don't understand because of my American accent? Naughty girl shaves her chibai. Once again, I'm absorbed into the nude-colored, body-shaping undergarment. I walk the show with other size 0 models. My shoes are too small, but I smile and sashay in this unsightly underwear like I'm fucking Cinderella. Or like I need the $500. Nature is failing. She burns and burns, forgetting what it feels like to be wet. And me, weathering a salted cup, waiting for damp. Nearby forests scorch. Not a sky-born drop, yet water pours from faucets. Should I leave a dish of water out for animals? Or will that only breed mosquitoes? Who gets to survive? Fires consume bodies. We wear white masks to filter toxic breaths. My cousin told me about Mao's campaign during the Great Leap Forward to kill the 4 pests: flies, rats, mosquitoes, sparrows. The people banged pots incessantly to prevent sparrows from resting. Soft stones dropped from the sky. What other animals fell? 55 million people, my ancestors. In this block, poisoned bread is left on the sidewalk for pigeons, for cats, for dogs, the hungry. Dear pigeon, your body is a rain-filled cloud. 2 strips of night band each wing. The aurora of your neck must magnetize you to earth. Why are you so anxious? You've made maps, but the city changes. You're famished, but the bread you've eaten crumbles your bones. A rat runs across the sidewalk, then back again. He looks in my direction and runs towards me. I casually step to the side as the rat continues into the bushes. This is how I make friends.
Thank you, Leanne. Our next reader is Michael McGee, who is a member of the Jack Straw Writing Program in 2009. Michael McGee has 2 recent poetry collections, Budapest After Dark, 2024, and Terra Firma, Sacred Ground, 2022. His plays include A Night in Reading Jail with Oscar Wilde and Shank's Mare. Travel, music, art, and movies are recurrent themes. After living in England, he moved to Tacoma, Washington. Please welcome Michael McGee.
Well, I get to be a thorn between 5 roses. What a wonderful part I get to play. Poetic outlaws. Without poets, without artists, everything would fall apart into chaos. Apollinaire. We wear masks to hide our identities. We go out in public, but we stay incognito, while keeping our words to ourselves hidden, not picking a fight we can lose. We keep ourselves holstered, waiting for the moment to pull our pens out, as though we were desperados in search of richer rewards. And banks are not for us, or even safe deposit boxes, those we can blow with explosives. No, the combinations are in our minds, and there's no safe we can't crack. Savings and loans mean nothing to us, no Bonnies and Clydes, no strong arm holdups, but instead we stay focused, using only our bare knuckle words. Voice in the Machine is one I wrote for my wife Jean, who's died about 5 years ago, and so this is dedicated to her. The Voice in the Machine. As a child, I used to sing Be My Love, as though I was Mario Lanza. I hid behind the living room sofa to serenade my parents with my childish tenor, and with my kisses set you burning. I strained for the highest notes, trying to be true to the voice of my master, whoever else would listen that I adore. And all the while, the Capitol dome on the label kept spinning around in the background with a purple sky that I wanted to fly around until I was too dizzy for love of the record machine in my voice to turn it off. And it kept spinning like the wheel of fortune until I knew eternally that you will be my love. Slavia Cafe Prague was when I was in Prague. I went to a very famous cafe that was the start of the Velvet Revolution in Prague. And there's a painting on the wall that I'd heard about, and it's called The Absinthe Drinker. And when I wrote my Oscar Wilde play, I used the line, "Absinthe makes the heart grow fonder," which is as good as anything that Oscar Wilde ever wrote. Anyway, The Absinthe Drinker is by Victor Oliva. So, closing time, a new moon lingers, Venus resting in her cradle, and in the painting, an old man sits at his table, watching the mermaid flick the lovely tail which she tries to hide. And the old gentleman smiles. Meanwhile, the waiter stands pigeon-toed. He lives in a visible world where an empty bottle A glass half full means what's closing time. Now the lovers have drifted away 2 by 2. Below, the swans are fishing in the Vlatava, its old name before the Moldau. Above, the castle Hrachany keeps its distance. St. Vitus Cathedral, a silhouette in spires, while Charles Bridge links the older and lesser towns of Prague. Only the Green Lady gazes through him in this painting. While he stares, the music plays until she disappears for good, slipping away to leave him on the rocks. Road to a Grecian Urn was written in Rome. I went to Keats's grave, and the famous epitaph which Keats wrote for himself is on the grave. Here lies one whose name was writ in water. So this is my story of going to Keats's grave. In Rome, I walked over water. The Tiber had shriveled up. I paced while waiting at the cemetery door. The gates were locked until 3 o'clock. A man with puppy dog eyes tried to pick me up. Not flattering myself, I think it was an Italian film director, De Sica, but brushed him off gently as I could. And I found the Pyramid of Cestius with a map, the near my grave of Severn, buried with his children, and next to him, Keats. The sun had barely given us its shade. I waited there an hour for one whose name is writ in water. My thirst was slaked. I placed a tiny stone on his grave, white, blue-veined. A simple headstone marked the spot, a poet's death. I took my time. I sat down. No one was there but him, the solace of a poet's life. And the last one from Terra Firma is a short little ditty called Bookworm. When I lived in England, I got this in the mail. You would get these messages, and it said, little tattered message I got said, "Excuse us, but the snails have eaten your mail." Signed, the British Postal Service. A book made of cardboard, filled in cracks with words and tied with string. 2 words pasted on the cover, opens like the heart's secret chamber. And I find your words a solace against the rain, turning another page, waiting for the eye to settle its wandering, always looking to rest, knowing words are like breath. You must take them in, hold them in your chest before you exhale and release them. And sometimes, if you look tucked into the corner, like the mail, a tiny snail. And then these are from Budapest After Dark. I went to Budapest in October and spent about a month there, and I ended up writing this book. So, Budapest After Dark. That's the title poem. At night, I would look out from my window across the square where the Roma were gathering to banter, and the dogs were barking to the sound of a harmonica as the skateboards formed a rhythm section, and the people from the tavern were toasting half-moon glasses while I am dry tonight. And in the cell of my room, more monkish than Kafka, there are bars on our doors. I hear singing, and across the city, I can see lights from the Margit Bridge. A white halo appears overhead. Small lights in clusters, constellations in the hills of Buda make lovely ornaments for those in Pest. Next poem is Woman with a Bird Cage, and it's based on this painting, which this is the cover of my book, and it's in the Hungarian National Art Gallery. So this was my favorite painting, and you'll see why. It's called Woman with a Bird Cage, like woman with a red dress on, right? Woman with a bird cage. So, here we go. She sings to us through pouting lips. Her back is arched, her eyes averted in pale white, a chocolate dress. And the cage is green as she holds it, as if it was a lantern, casting out its spell. We will hear nothing but what she sees, a bird in twilight, in ultraviolet, green, glowing as the borealis. Moon over Budapest has a multilingual pun. I learned about 50 words of Hungarian, which I used over and over again. And in this poem, alum means pigeon, alum, and tubis, I learned, means a slang word for pigeons. So I used those words to make like a multilingual pun in this poem. Moon over Budapest. A song of new glasses, the aviator kind, as the moon appears half full, half empty at the windowsill. The sky opens its eyes and looks at me through the trees. I fly up on my pinions, my tail feathers or thoughts fanning out. Like goloms, two bees or not two bees. A new moon over Budapest. I float over the horizon of the Danube. Liszt's hand, I ended up going to Liszt's house, which is a museum in Budapest. Liszt didn't live in Budapest most of his life. He actually lived in Germany most of the time. But he came back at the end and founded the Academy of Hungarian Music. But I went to his house, which is also a living dead museum of Liszt. And these are the things I saw in the museum. Liszt's hand. Strike as you may, Liszt's bronze hand rests in peace. Not suspended in drop-down technique where he gripped the keys of the piano, where he sat, posture straight, playing his chickering. Now his long fingers can relax their grip on marble instead of ivory keys. Nearby, his crucifix, the writing desk given him by Busendorfer, his cane and lamp affixed, his evening gloves await, and released into his death the notes to when a comet was born. And the wonderful story behind this is that Liszt was born when a comet was in the sky. It's the most wonderful way to be born and to end your life too, I think, you know. I wouldn't mind ending up as a comet or a green flash, you know, the other. Radar Eye was written on the way home as I was flying on the plane back. So this is sort of like geography, a visual map of a virtual experience of flying back from Budapest. At 34,000 feet, Keflavik is on the radar screen, a mackerel crowded sky. Like hands in the snow leave prints, the tracings of contrails, overflowing the ice shelves, the margins of a continent's great lakes, the votive plains and the plateaus, ridges of ice. We take a turn toward Newfoundland and the Northwest Territories, vast swatches of space open on the in-flight chessboard. And to my radar eye, an uninhabited map where the dots keep moving to a place where wildfires went unchecked in Yellowknife. And like a tracer bullet, I follow our course above the curvilinear, earth, towards a vast horizon where Vancouver lies, off the far west coast of my sight. And then, before we dip to the south with ours, to the harbor of Puget Sound, I see an airport, a terminus, end of our map, that closes now, delivering me down the ramp to customs, where I declare I'm home. And then the final poem is my reading lamp. My reading lamp. Like an apple, it glows in the half-baked dark. Its shaded green, a Granny Smith, covers me with its glow. The pit of it, where it lives, screwed in to be of service, provides me sustenance for my daily work of self-esteem, gives me a healthy glow. Under its spell, I live to write another day, words at the very core of it. My apple a day keeps the editor away. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So we're going to take 5 minutes and then, get up and stretch your legs, and then we'll come back for 3 more poets. Thank you. Okay, I invite you all to come back to your seats. Thank you. All right, our next reader is Shinyi Pai, who was a Jack Straw writer in 2016. Shinyi Pai is currently Civic Poet of Seattle for 2023 to 24. She is the author of 13 books, including most recently No Neutral by Empty Bowl Press, published in 2023. She is creator and host of the chart-topping, award-winning podcast 10,000 Things for KUOW, Seattle's NPR station. Please welcome Shinyi Pai.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kathleen, for organizing this series. I'm going to read from a book that was published last year during the pandemic. The book is called No Neutral from Empty Bowl, and it's a book that's very much about exploring and claiming a more authentic voice and engaging with a lot of different social issues. It's grounded very deeply in my relationship to the Pacific Northwest and to the West Coast. And I'll just read you some poems from this collection. This first piece was inspired by the work of Jenny Odell and her book, How to Do Nothing, which talks a lot about our relationship to non-human species, particularly trees. Saving Time, with thanks to Jenny Odell. They weren't given time to flower once more in the week after daylight savings, the light grown longer, the temperature warmer. Our city chainsawed them down, declaring them diseased, though arborists that campaigned to save the sakuras saw no evidence of decay. And once the cherry trees were stumps, affirmed healthy heartwood and cambium. These trees had no voice, so activists cited the Japanese-American story, the farmers who once moved produce at Pike Place before their removal, though some resisted. Nature, like people, has been known to stand its ground, like that rogue palm tree planted at Alki Beach or the giant sequoia that's persisted just east of Macy's. They have no value, are deemed worthless despite being wayfinders for all who see trees as time markers of when we are versus trees as canopy and shade. And the local news is quickly subsumed by the doom scroll of more important stories. The diesel derail in Anacortes, 3,100 gallons of hazardous fuel spilled on Swinomish territory. Government and business forget to think about who was here before, in their forward-thinking versions and visions of development, losing touch with witness, trees chopped down before they could bloom again, complete their cycle, like salmon returning to spawn, sakura petals like snow, blanketing Pike Street again. I just spent a weekend in Port Townsend out on the peninsula, and so I'm going to share with you a couple of poems about that particular landscape. This piece is a poem about a piece of public art that's on the grounds of Fort Worden. It's called Memories Vault, and it is a piece that was designed by the sculptor Richard Turner from California, which pairs his sculptural works and architecture with the poems of Sam Hamill. If you haven't been to this site, Fort Worden is a retired military base where no battles were ever fought, and the particular piece that's sited on the top of a hill in a meadow draws from a lot of different Asian-infused influences, including Hindu, Japanese, and Chinese, all kind of mashed up together. And the architecture of the site includes 7 10-foot-tall pillars that compel a visitor to have to look up in order to read the text on them. And there are also seats placed around the site that also choreograph the movement of the visitor. So this is Monuments for Men, Memories Vault, Fort Worden. I can't deny that beauty is here when bullied by design to turn my back to salt water and enthrone myself beneath the shelter, to face a single pale stone enshrined within a slab mausoleum, the permanence of rock as persistent as the force of men. It's evident in the words etched onto stone steles, hostile architectures crafted by those who saw themselves like gods, who coerced the eyes upward to poles planted at the site. That old trope of the man and his lover, the sea, patiently waiting for his return. I think, why not turn the gaze back to her, right now, the sea? We have already seen enough of all that's man-made. This is a poem about an incident that happened in the city of Redmond, which is just east of here. It's where Microsoft is located. And about a year and a half ago, 2 cycles back, they have this annual civic festival called Redmond Lights, and they often commission public artists to participate in this exhibition. And there was an incident where they commissioned a couple of local artists to make a piece, and once the piece was installed, they actually asked them to alter it or change it. And so this is a piece about that incident and about being in solidarity with those artists. Recognition. Last year, the city hired a diversity expert, though the public statement about the artwork came through the Office of Parks and Rec. The public artists commissioned calligraphers were forced to destroy their own artwork after a month and a half of labor, complying with managerial concerns to control the public narrative. Creative direction from the city-state. 4 years before, the local government passed its inclusion resolution, an expression of public opinion when hate visited the community in the form of a Ku Klux Klan robe abandoned at a black woman's retail shop. Despite the problems with single-issue activism and virtue signaling, the artists were gracious and disciplined citizens in giving credit for the swift reversal of order. The city even provided a canopy and space heater to hasten their repair. To reinscribe in Arabic and English, remember Palestine. The very mention of homeland as hackle-raising, as calling, Taiwan a country, or the Duwamish an indigenous people, a tribe, dictating what history, whose personhood, is counted in the master narrative, which subjects have a right to speak. This poem is about a news story that happened here in the Seattle area a couple years ago. Some of you may remember there was a horrible accident on the Aurora Bridge involving a duck boat. So duck boats are these kind of, they're like these land and water vehicles that are from really the World War II era. And there was a collision that resulted in the death of 5 people, many of them international students from countries in Asia. And when the parents of those young people went to recover some financial reparation for what had happened and the loss of their children, it was found that there was a racist law on the books of Washington State that would prevent them from being able to make claims. And in order for justice to be done, it was necessary to change the laws on the books. This is damages. The tour company blamed the out-of-state duck boat seller for a shoddy product, while the seller blamed Washington State for not enforcing repairs. The state blamed the city for not installing a median barrier on the bridge, while the city blamed the local tour provider in the deaths of 5 people and the injuries of 36 more. In their argument, the defense invoked a law adopted in 1909, designed more than 100 years ago, to keep the wives of Chinese coal miners from receiving wrongful death redress. That prevented the parents of Korean-born Ha Ram Kim from filing suit. Ms. Kim was an oldest daughter without income or family members living in the United States at the time of her death, legally reducing her value to nothing. What parent could live with this logic? Council maintained dispassionate discourse, refusing to discuss whether the law was racist. The state legislature could argue it, which it did. It was an Asian American labor activist whose parents were once imprisoned in Camp Minidoka who sponsored the bill, which passed with 61 to 37 votes. Governor Inslee signed it into law 4 years after the incident, and 2 months after the suit ended in a $123 million payout, which is cheap. I'm going to read you a couple of poems about this art exhibition in Southern California called the Desert X Biennial. Every couple of years, guest curators come and curate a series of art installations that are installed around Palm Springs and Palm Desert. And I was able to attend a couple of those installations last year when I was in California visiting my parents. And they engage a number of very well-known international artists, but the installation that I found most striking was a installation that they made of work by the individual Tyree Nichols. Tyree Nichols was a young, emerging black artist who, at a routine traffic stop in Memphis, was pulled over and beaten so badly by police officers that he later died of the injuries that he sustained. So the curators of Desert X decided to ask his parents if it would be possible to take some of Tyree's photographs of the landscape and to install them along billboards along the side of the road. So this is at the side of the road for Tyree Nichols. Lining both sides of the highway roadside signs, my eye caught sight of the pictures the 29-year-old took down in Memphis, his adopted home, which he cared for by photographing. There was no way to slow down, go back, or park the car, to process the information coming toward me in the back seat of the fast-moving car. I aimed my camera at billboards that blurred as I passed by. The removal of my eye filtered through a device, leaving me cold and distanced in the desert wind, like the wall between reading and sensing another news story and recognizing at once his name and gaze. How different to feel into his likenesses, signposts, images of bridges, water and stone, markers shining at sunset. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to read you one last poem. I spend a lot of time hanging out, looking at art around Seattle, and one of my favorite places is at the Museum of Pop Culture and Industry. There is a labyrinth that was made by two artists, Trimpin, who's a sound artist, and then another public artist who created this labyrinth that is on the back side of Mopop, near where the children's play area is. And I had a really lovely opportunity to visit this site and discover it with a dear friend who's been sick. And so this poem is for Gary Mula. Coiling lines. It would be easier to travel outside the lines or cut directly through the field, to cheat time instead of letting attention unfold at its own pace. At times, the switchbacks resemble a forking maze, the way some paths can lead to nowhere. These trails weren't drawn to be traveled side by side, but we walk them anyway, bumping into bands of tourists, gangs of families stuck fast in the web, their bodies the same as serpentine turns, put there to halt the mind that wants to think, I am doing this right, walking deeper into what was designed to reshape the perceptions, raise regard, to awaken back to heart center. Thank you.
Thank you, Shinyi. Our next reader is Sylvia Byrne Pollock, who was a Jack Straw writer in 2019. I was her fortunate curator that year. Sylvia Byrne Pollock's poems appear in the Stillwater Review, Crab Creek Review, Wild Roof, and many other print and online journals. She's a 2-time Pushcart nominee, a 2019 Jack Straw writer, and a 2021 Mineral School resident. Her debut collection, Risking It, 2021, and her latest book, What Lasts, 2023, are both from Red Mountain Press. Please welcome Sylvia Byrne Pollock.
See if I remember how to do this. Thank you, Kathleen, and thanks, of course, to Jack Straw, wonderful Jack Straw. It's so nice to see some of my people here. So, as Kathleen said, Risking It, my first book, came out in 2021. You know, right at the beginning of the shutdown. So. I'm glad to have a chance to share it here. And then the second book, What Lasts, was just published last November. Risking It talks about a number of things, but there are two characters I created that show up quite a bit in this. One is the deaf woman, and she's modeled on Marvin Bell's Dead Man poems. The other is a character named Letitia, who is, for me, a kind of a vessel in which I pour my ideas, thoughts, angst, whatever else, about bipolar II disorder. So I'll just read you two poems from Risking It. One in the deaf woman's voice, and one in Letitia's. Prayer falling on deaf ears. Dear God, please send a decoder, an angel with mellifluous voice, to perch in the rim of my ear. Make her multi-armed so she can catch, parse, and juggle the staccato bursts of racket, soaring sibilants that pass for human speech. Let her have a device to analyze the incoming cacophony, assemble syllables. Give her an algorithm to detect possible words in English. Try them out for meaning in the context of a rapid conversation. What I'm saying, God, is that she must be fast, perceptive, imaginative, and indefatigable. Try her out on those words. If you can't detail an angel to me, perhaps you can put video displays on the forehead of each person I meet. Like super titles at the opera, their words will scroll gently across, riding the wrinkles. If you'll do this, I promise to stop nodding inanely, laughing or looking serious at the wrong time. I will be a credit to your handiwork. If you decide to answer me, God, please stand squarely in front of me. Let me see your lips when you speak. And a Letitia poem. Did you fail lithium, or did it fail you? Tiny elemental socket wrenches do a turn, sometimes for the good, sometimes not. Beleaguered synapses borrow transmitters, send frantic SOS signals no one's receiving. Meanwhile, there's a longing for some semblance of sanity. All the marbles cinched safely in a small hand-woven bag, none rolled under the sofa or used as ball bearings in a Rube Goldberg contraption. Invention is necessity's stepdaughter, waiting for her chance to step out, step up into a waiting pumpkin. When the wheels come off, and they will, lithium works frantically to right the carriage. The inevitable ditch into which everything falls is filled with dank water, toads, milfoil. Word is sent for some desiccant. Word is sent for a sump pump. Word returns empty-handed. So the second book, the one that came out in 23, also from Red Mountain Press, is basically a memoir in verse. And maybe about a third of the poems are Letitia poems, talking about, as I said, bipolar 2. So the memoir aspects. If I had regrets, and who doesn't, it's that I was afraid, forgot to believe in myself, didn't follow Rilke's advice, go to the limits of your longings. It's too late now to know what might have happened if I'd taken more lovers, challenged more colleagues, breached more professional barriers, spent more time with my children, read more nonfiction and poetry, kept playing my flute and singing. There's no control group for this experiment called my life. But I've no regrets for those times I was able to wriggle out of the mind's intricate mesh chastity belt, woven of tradition, misogyny, and mental illness. I thought I'd read this one because you all would feel very at home with it. It's called My Cruelest Month. Doesn't everyone have a cruelest month? Memory and desire mixing like mismatched socks, worn by people disdaining selfies while secretly craving at least a mention in People magazine. Criteria for cruelty are in the mind of the beholder, built brick by brick. A gold toilet enclosing shithouse is left on the West Wing lawn. I dread the aftermath. Worry rage will trigger my annual February descent into the abyss. Cruel February with its 2 R's rumbling doom. April can't come soon enough. And it's Pride Month, so I have to read one of the poems for my wife, Molly. This is a short one. Cherry Blossom Poems. If all of the poems about cherry blossoms were laid end to end, they would girdle the globe. An obi cinching Earth's green and blue kimono. A place to tuck your chopsticks, the ones you use to pluck stars from the sky. And I'll close with Libra. The tang of apples, splattered to curbside sauce by passing cars on October afternoons, lingers into chill nights, insinuates into dreams of travel and death. How many more chances will I be given? How many more will I take? Inching across this high wire, words strung between poles. A line I must trust will be wide enough for my foot. If there are answers, where do they perch? In what seas do they dream? I don't need to grasp them. A glimpse will do. A flash of red feathers, sun glistening on scales. Here at the circus, thrills and elephant dung mix with straw, sweat, and spun sugar candy. The rings are inviting. Each day, I perform acts of faith, acts of yearning. Each day I practice turning away. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Our last but not least reader tonight is Molly Tenenbaum, who is a Jack Straw writer in 2007. I guess we used to say 2007, didn't we? Molly Tenenbaum is the author of 5 books of poems, including The Arborists from Moonpath in 2023, Mytheria from Two Sylvias in 2017, and The Cupboard Artist, Floating Bridge in 2012. Her first chapbook, Blue Willow, was published by Floating Bridge in 1998. Besides writing poetry, she likes drawing, gardening, and playing the banjo. Please welcome Molly Tenenbaum.
Hello. It's nice to have this view. So yeah, the arborist was, deep mid-pandemic. I'll just read from it. It's got a bunch of long poems, but I'm going to read mostly the short ones because time. The White Wing. At my ear, left ear, a moth won't brush away. Floating blur, white wing, friend or foe of my face. We're going out walking, we're going. A bit of fluff, a whiff of paper, small white sound, a foot-caught bird. What is it floating here, white blur? We're going out walking. Tell them, we're going. White hair of my head, white wing at my eye. Whatever you tell me to do, I do. We're going out walking. Tell them, we're going. The cover of this book is a painting which you should go out and look at it up close on the table, and you could look at it forever. It's a painting by my aunt, who was a painter, and she never got very famous, and so she died with a lot of paintings, which are now under my bed, and I don't have enough wall space, and so there you go. Works on paper, 1933, 2014. We canceled paper, we shredded paper. We schlepped bags and bags of paper. We signed paper, we set aside paper. We answered and asked paper. There was color on paper and a mountain and a tomato. Everyone was asking about the paper. What are you doing with the paper? Can we have some of the paper? She would have liked the one about the paper cowboy wanted for wrestling. Paper made us laugh. We wanted to scan her phone pad paper, sketches of collars and hairdos on cards, and mail them. Is there a stamp for this paper? And the rates, haven't they risen? We wrote return to sender on paper. We paid $1,000 shipping ourselves her truckload of paper. At home, we tossed our own paper, summer camp paper, college paper. Sorry, biographers, leap through the gaps in our paper. She liked real paper, how ink spread and sank in the paper. If we digitize it, can we keep all the paper? To digitize means our fingers split dry from handling the paper. We wanted to edit what seemed irrelevant paper, money paper, worry paper, but she never knew, in scratching the paper, rent check or sunset, which the last completing paper. We should show experts the paper. Collectors would love the best paper, would advise to throw out the damp, damaged paper, spotted like yellow seeds dropped on the paper. She never knew what to do with the paper, under her bed, rolled up paper, but kept on painting the paper. Never had space to display the paper, too pricey to frame all the paper. There is no frame. Or now our whole house is the frame around boxes of it. Come over to see her ocean paper, What could we do? So much paper. We push-pinned one piece to the wall, the sun on a mountain on paper. So this one, there's just a couple words that might not make sense. Those are fiddle tune titles. So all of a sudden, there's like, what are they talking about? It's just the titles of tunes. Pass the salt. I was never going to say passed for died. I'd be direct with the dirt, say, I'm sorry she's dead. My friend listing on eBay her childhood Barbie's dream kitchen. In the dream drawer, the tiny forks. On the dream table, the breakfast with the half-inch coffee service. And listing her girlhood toy horses, the black with the white mane still here, while the mare with her full palomino was first to sell. We were pouring real wine into real crystal glasses, rushing the red to the bowl's widest slice. The salad on a green glazed platter just brought from her mother's. An attic to empty, the clues adding up, until it phrased through me, did your mom pass? And I joined the long line, the hats of black netting jiggling as they talk, the men so kind in white shirts, the hands clasped in front or shaking yours, as they passed before family, kissing their cheeks. We passed the Montepulciano. I passed on seconds of pie, the no mother air, breath by breath, passing through our bodies. We passed the empty plates to the end. A wine glass broke as it passed to the dishwasher. And later we uncased our instruments, passing through the 4 chord to 5, back to 1, passing 3 tunes to the ceiling, Maid of the House, Wild Horses, Hi Dad in the Morning. And driving home, I nearly passed my own exit, but swerved last minute into my lane, slept in my own bed, and so passed the night. I had passed on buying the white-maned black horse, passed on the chance for Barbie's dream kitchen, though still I longed for it a little, so tiny and perfect, but for missing 1 cup from the coffee service. I'm tired of life and death. I want the product where the manufacturer's label says all man-made fibers. The item completely understandable, shining forward off the stainless rollers, utterly seamless, emitting a homogeneous glow. If once a larval tube groped for soil, or if emerging a sticky green eye like an infection trembled at the top, I want the object buffed to the unified hardness below. When hot fur breathed in a burrow, when paws smelled strongly of paw, a slurry sloked the matter to molecular components. I want it fresh from the extruder. We were keeping the room empty, the bowl of light on the sill. To be pure block, replication removed, in the slight scent of flame retardant. To be in the solid quiet of the original box, unopened, in mint condition. I want to read this one. So thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Jack Straw. Lori and I were in 2007 together. I barely remember a thing, but it was fun. We learned something. I do have another book coming out this summer, and I've got a sign-up sheet out there for if you want to know about it. It's drawings, which, like, yeah, I just started drawing, but it's so much fun. And David Lasky is here, like king drawer of my life. And also, you should go see the Haiku Comics exhibit that's still up. How long is it up for? Till Friday, yeah, so quick. At Push Pull in Ballard, it's on Market and 20th. And I took that class a few times and haven't been able to lately, but you should also take the class. You're starting a new session soon. So this poem, okay, so I'm not teaching English anymore, but I did for a long time. And occasionally I would teach Emily Dickinson's Because I Could Not Stop for Death. And then, you know, students these days have whole different sets of knowledge and information. And at the end of the poem, so because I could not stop for death, it kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality, which is probably not how that should be pronounced. But so it became clear later in the discussion, because at the end of the poem, there she is in the carriage with immortality and death. And finally, at the end, she figures out that the horses' heads are heading towards basically the graveyard or eternity. Choose one or both. Anyway, the students are going like, what are these horses all of a sudden doing in this poem? And I realized that carriage had been a little bit of a confusion. So then later when I taught the poem, I showed a lot of pictures of carriages with horses before we even started the thing. I mean, it's okay, you know, people have different sets of information. And it was really fun. We would draw maps of the journey. It's like, oh, they're passing the schoolyard. And then I made people color it in because, okay, well, I'll stop talking about it. I'll read my poem. So my poem is basically my version. Also, it's kind of clearly set in a city where there's a lot of construction going on. The horses' heads. Because I could not stop, I stepped onto my rolling plat, scored paths for gardens, dashes for streets, sketched trees, but the green so enmeshed I erased for ease of seeing every other branch. Always beneath my beat, my feet spinning white as hot water. Always behind my eyes, an onion unwrapping, advancing to dinner. Since can't stop's corollary is can't go back, it's too late this winter to crush one more fragrant footprint down last summer's time stairs. Because I could not stop, I drank strong tea so my heart would race when I sat still. When I sat still, I clamored fast music. All in a rumble, for round, for ripe, I'd tested the soil, fed the plot, slurped as many sweet millions as were halfway red. Could not stop the juice-eating sores in the silver skin of my mouth. The hurrying house, it wants my life savings for a new roof. Though the instant I exit, investors will scrape it, doorstep to cornice, clean off its dirt to plop a bigger one on what had been my lot. They will, too. One more poem, and thank you all for being here. Starting ahead of time. I set out the bread bowl the night before bread. Days before travel, the suitcase comes down from the shelf. I was there early, the empty room, the chairs with their shining seats in the afternoon sun. I left the house early so not to be rushed. I rushed to be early so as not to rush. Rush, the soughing of wind. Rush, the rilling of water. The chairs were empty again, staying after. Early, while it is quiet. Late, while it is quiet. Rushes for candles and rushes for freshness of floors. My friend, who has a different policy, comes late when it's already started, arrives in the middle, the people all talking, and leaves while it's still going on. Thank you so much. Thanks, Kathleen.
Thank you, Molly. So let's give one more round of applause for our readers tonight. Laurie Blonner, Leanne Dunick, Michael McGee, Shinyi Pai, Sylvia Byrne-Pollock, and Molly Tenenbaum. Thank you. It was wonderful reading. Thank you so much for coming. Please feel free to peruse the book table. I hope you will buy books, talk to the authors, and again, so pleased that you're here tonight. Thank you so much.